Hi everybody, welcome back to part 2 of my presentation of my debut novel Shattered Shadows. I hope you enjoyed part 1. Please hit the subscribe and notification buttons to hear my other episodes. And to buy the novel, you can go to Amazon or um, there's a whole bunch of different ways to buy it, as you probably are well aware. So just look up the title, Shattered Shadows, or my name, Gowrie Krishnan, and you'll be able to find it. So now, in my other episodes, I'll be talking about writing in some way. So everyone who's passionate about writing, please come along and join. Um, like I said in my very first video, if I can be a published writer, anyone can do it. You just have to believe in yourself, observe the world for inspiration, and always have a notepad handy to jot down your ideas. Now, the next few episodes after this one will be tips on how to how to write your own novel. So stay tuned for those ones. Today I'll be talking to you about the research that went into creating my novel, the themes that are involved in the novel, and I'll be talking a little bit about feminist prose. So enjoy. I researched all the aspects from the towns to the beaches to the tiny details of what types of native plants grew in the gardens and in the forests. I researched what mountain ranges stood near my various settings, what rivers ran past, and what buildings were situated near my settings. These included temples, skyscrapers, and slums. Um, Now, I realize you might not be able to research if your setting isn't in a real life place on this earth. If it's a fictional place or if it's a planet far, far away, then you might want to get some inspiration from real life places. I'd like to share a taste of the descriptions that I found that I created from the research from this following passage. Among the vast sprawling neighborhood of Vadapalani in the western part of Chennai, known for its film studios and the Vadapalani Andava temple, and a significant pilgrimage center, pigeons purred and cooed as they gathered by the footsteps of a rustic-style off-white two-story bungalow, pecking at old grains of hardened rice. The sun peeked over the top of the Ghat Mountains and the adjacent bungalows and buildings. The architectural details that encompassed many of the buildings, especially the temples, were astounding. The curvature of every arc that eventually led to a sacred point seemed spiritually created with fine craftsmanship by those with a keen eye and creativity drawn from the very soul. Now, one of my favorite parts of the book is a description of the main character's opposite neighbor, Kochama. The inspiration for the character and her garden came from my mother and the hours of tedious grooming and care she takes in her own garden. I'd like to share a passage from that section. She then stared lazily at Kochama in the house opposite of them, watering her picturesque flowers that bloomed in a variety of colors. With gracefully arched corridors, the double-story red brick home where Kochama lived out the rest of her days had the most manicured garden beds Mina had ever laid her eyes on. She wondered how much time and effort it took on Kochama's part to groom them so much, so that her flower beds always seemed to be in full bloom despite the seasonal monsoons and scorching heat of the summers. Mina doubted any weeds even existed in the old lady's perfectly pruned garden. Day-glow pink deodar trees and sea-blue hydrangea bushes lined her large, well-pruned yard, growing thick and fragrant. Some from a batch that had been budding for a while poked through the fence, heralding the start of spring. Leaning against her window with its bars rusting silently, piece by piece, Mina inhaled deeply as she felt the evening breeze first hit her nose that was stuck up in the air, and then her eyes that she shut tightly, visualizing being anywhere else but there. The nippy breeze then smoothed past her sunken cheekbones and lifted the sides of her loose hair as Mina swayed to her own rhythm. The breeze seemed to create its own melodic dance, beckoning nature to waltz at its will. From her perch she could merely see snippets of Kochuma's red and pink roses in her garden bed, through the gate in a tango with the wind's wild gusty grasp. Some plants simply swayed to the beat of breezes. The pink lilies on bright green pads right at the back of her tidy yard bobbed in their little, neatly kept pond, dancing with the ripples in the emerald green water that sparkled like the twinkling of 1,000 fairies at night under the full moon. Mina did not need to see the array of flora to know it was spring. She could smell it in the air and feel it in her bones. She came alive in spring, capturing small bouts of hopefulness and holding on to them as long as she could. Along the fence, thickets of olive-green shrubs dotted with white jasmine flowers traveled around and in between the slats of wood. Mina focused her eyes on Kochuma's crisp bougainvillea flowers with their curled purple petals that resembled leaves, dotted with white in the middle, as they recoiled beckoning to the gentle breeze that wafted past, opening towards the sunlight. There are many themes within the premise of my narrative, including love, loss, degradation, and hope against all odds. I entwined these themes with twists and turns in the narrative, keeping the readers wondering to the very end. From the beginning, Mina is put through a whole host of tribulations and loss, and finds herself trapped in a dark hole, figuratively speaking, and finds hope and love in the most unexpected way. Her best friend finds love, but quickly meets misfortune. With seemingly no hope of ever leaving the brothel, Mina struggles with the battles that young girls in India go through to date. I'd just like to give you another little snippet from my novel. Mina looked down at the soft white dress, feeling the smoothness of the skin softly gliding like a flowing stream of water against her fingertips. Mina felt absurdly incongruous in the sheer, tight nightie that flaunted her taut body and emphasized her tiny bosom. Done, that looks good. I gotta put some makeup on you now, Yasmin said, roughly moving the child around this way and that. Mina felt like a rag doll being tossed about, manicured, sewn up, and painted, prettied up from top to bottom. You are beautiful, you know. Dark-skinned but pretty eyes, Yasmin remarked, her tone oddly changed. Something within Yasmin ached for a brief moment at the acknowledgement of Mina's impending destiny to spend a lifetime clasped within the shackles of degradation. Feelings of pity and guilt merged as she dolled up this tired, innocent little child. Mina listened to Yasmin in silent acquiescence. She had Mina sit on her bed, taking her fingernails and toenails, painting them pillar box red. Mina looked at them, the mere sight of the vibrant color making her stomach lurch. Her nails were dried within 10 minutes. The camisole was innocent yet sexy, the makeup overdone, and Yasmin's pity and guilt were gone. She too had to undergo the very same experience at a similar age. No one took pity on her, her mind had painfully reminded her. Lastly, Yasmin brushed at Mina's curly hair roughly over and over until it smoothed out and plaited it neatly, placing a silky eggshell-colored ribbon at the end, tied in a cute little bow, trying to emphasize her innocence and virginity. Not that it was necessary at all. It was obvious, but simply gazing upon her tiny frame and youthful face, that she was merely a child who was about to be turned into something else, not into a woman. That process was to be taken from her that night, along with her innocence and her virginity. Mina was to quickly learn after that night that she and the others lived on sufferance in the fat woman's house. You never turn away a customer, treat them all courteously, and be submissive at all times, Yasmin cautioned ruefully. And then what? Mina whispered, terrified, with curiosity in her now watering eyes. Then you do what you are told, she replied matter-of-factly. It'll hurt. Don't scream. You'll want to run. Stay still. And above all, she paused, leaning down to whisper into Mina's ear like a dirty little secret. Don't resist, she shouted. Now get out. Grabbing the petite girl's frail stem-like arm violently, escorting her out of her room, slamming the door in Mina's face. Mina stood in front of Yasmin's door, perplexed, with tears streaming uncontrollably, wondering what was to become of her that night. Despite her tacit needling at the situation she had found herself in, Mina knew that she was not even in the position to capitulate. She was lower than that, someone stripped of her basic human rights. She was the fat woman's slave now. Questions flooded her mind. It seemed like a steam train was rushing past, tracks of random thought that served no answers, only created more questions, like what would hurt and why. She imagined having to stifle her screams under the oppression of this vile stranger, who was to find her, done up like a ghost doll, falling gracefully at his feet. I grew up reading feminist prose such as Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar, Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, and A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. To me, feminist prose is deeply honest and breaks the conventions of privilege. It is writing that speaks to women on a deep level and engages with all readers about the plight of women and their experiences. Feminist prose discusses the intersectional demand for equal representation in society, and it is within my novel where I was able to convey the heavy imbalance of the sexes in India and how poorly some women are treated there. Even though it is a work of fiction, the novel, as I mentioned earlier, is based on 4 years of research. I found the need to raise awareness of the multi-billion-dollar sex slave industry in India and the abduction of millions of children who are forced into sex slavery each year. I once read in the Femme Literature magazine that good literature is emotionally powerful and thought-provoking, and I truly believe that my novel is both an emotionally powerful and thought-provoking read. I really hope you get a chance to purchase a copy. If you do buy a copy, I truly hope that you thoroughly enjoy the experience of reading the novel as much as I enjoyed the experience of writing it. Thank you very much for joining me.